Uh, when I was preparing this speech, I thought about the what things look like and what kind of a speech I should give, and then I decided I thought about I could hold like some kind of normal, relaxed speech, informative, witty, ironic, sociologically detached. But I think I shall try to give a little bit of a different speech if I can. Because I think the situation in Europe is becoming rather tense over the last years. And some of you maybe saw Eva Hernik, the Member of Parliament. She was talking and she gave a rather sharp speech, basically an accusation against van der Leyen for having put Europe in a tough place. So there are tendencies towards polarization, and that things are speeding up, not necessarily in the right direction, to put it humbly. And to give support for this, that things are changing in Europe in maybe the wrong direction, I'd just like to give a few cases in point. In Sweden, my country, and I know people who work in these bureaucracies and institutions, they are being infiltrated by Islamists and other radical migrant groups, such as the Migration Authority and other bureaucracies. And this is a much bigger thing than people seem to realize. And if this is going on, what is Swedish and the Swedish welfare state will slowly start caving in. It's just one case in point. And we've been having over the last years big demonstrations in Sweden against our welfare state for kidnapping Muslim children. And this has been reported on Al Jazeera numerous times. And this, of course, creates tensions in Sweden, huge tensions. And we are innocent to this. We are not doing anything bad. If a child is in trouble, we need to help that child, regardless of background. And another case in point, in Malmö, my old hometown, I know the rabbi at the synagogue, and he told me that they used to have a vibrant community in Malmö, but over the last years, the number of Jews living in Malmö is going down. And soon Malmö might be, he told me, it might be Judenrein, which is a German phrase for there will no longer be any Jews in Malmö. So that's another case in point. And in Belgium, I just read Berlingske, a very, very good Danish newspaper, saying, and I hope this is true, or I guess this is true, that many teachers here in this city, in Brussels, are considering to give up due to being pressurized by Islamists. So the educational system in Brussels, and I guess in Belgium, and also maybe in other parts we don't know about, is being tilted and tainted and being pushed away from what they are supposed to teach according to European ideas and values and so forth. And then, of course, we had the Jew hunt, which is a terrible term in its own right, of course, in Amsterdam. And this is not 1930s, this is today. And how this can happen is like beyond me, as you can say. And things are happening in France and other countries. There are numerous similar worrying cases of escalating tensions between European values and Muslim values, I fear to say. So wherever you look, you get the impression that Islamists have been stepping up their actions over the last years. At least that is my impression. I think you could talk about a shift. I think you could talk about a kind of different reality where religious groups are putting their foot on the pedal and to try to speed up things a little bit, cautiously, but still you can notice it. And Brussels somehow seems to be in the limelight of it, at the heart of Europe. And if you just go back a few hundred years, you knew that at the heart of any country, any culture, there were people who were in charge of it, and they were the most adamant defenders, the most stern defenders of that particular culture. And here we have Brussels. And here, strangely enough, ironically enough, we seem to have people who seem to be sometimes less interested than the normal average population, the normal worker, the normal, person out there to defend European values. So the whole thing has been turned upside down. The coat has come inside out. And that's a very strange shift. It's a revolution, you could say. And it has happened without many people have noticed it, I think. Right. So I was thinking about the idea of a litmus test. I still think that maybe if you want to use the idea of a litmus test of this new reality, in my view, maybe it is shown by the worsening situation for Jews throughout Europe. And not only in Europe. In American universities, Jews are forbidden sometimes to enter the university buildings. And this is happening now. And so how, just to link this little introduction to um, the topics for the evening, how does this overview relate to the topics for the evening? Just a few points. Um, I would say that the above cases about the Jews in Europe and in the West, uh, we can witness a left-wing agenda without principles. They have no principles. They have no political principles. If you imagine skinheads had been behind this Jew hunt in Amsterdam, we can all guess what our academics and what the media would do. The response would be very different and much, much more powerful. But now, suddenly, Jew hatred is no longer that bad, apparently, obviously, strangely. So the left cares about Jews when it fits into their own agenda, when it fits into the left's agenda, or else Jews have little value or no value. When caring about Jews may collide with the left's interests in possible future votes, namely votes from migrant groups, then it seems Jews are less important. So sometimes it's hard not to get ironic, even when you really try hard to write a serious paper. I have to say that. Second point I'd like to make: why is this happening? Why are Islamists behaving like this, seemingly engaging in what some call a hostile takeover, an attempt at a hostile takeover of central Western institutions, such as schools and bureaucracies? I was thinking about it, and I suggest they do it for a special reason. They do it because they can. They do it because they can do it. And how come they can do it? I think they can do it because of multiculturalism. They can do it because of multiculturalism. And that would be something interesting to talk about, I think. And the third point I'd like to address here is something that was also up, in the blurb for this talk here. Why don't they want to integrate? I mean, that's a question that comes up all the time. I think this question is the most telling question of all the questions circulating around multiculturalism. And my comment is this: yes, why doesn't a person born and raised in a deeply religious society, in a religion alien to Christianity and everything it stands for, a society where men and women are strictly divided, strictly kept apart, and where your entire sense of safety revolves around your family, your clan, and your tribe, and where our Western state is nothing but a name? Why doesn't this person immediately desire to give all this up for something of which he knows nothing? And probably, and I can't blame him subjectively, holds in contempt. How is this possible? Yes, why don't they want to integrate when our society is so much better? And the fourth point I'd like to make: can we even talk about, this is also something very important topic for tonight's discussion, can we even talk about a Belgian identity? Can we talk about a Swedish identity? After having been subjected to multiculturalism for decades, and should I add postmodernity, which has an odd, interesting similarity to multiculturalism for many reasons. Can we talk about Swedish values? What are our values if we need to spit them out? What are they about? Are our values really multiculturalism? Are they even compatible with multiculturalism? Are values such as openness, tolerance, and individual freedom multicultural values, i.e., weak values with no backbone? Or are they rather our firm values that cannot be sacrificed for diversity or multiculturalism? So what I'm saying here is that our values might seem weak and tolerant, And yet they may be very firm. We are convinced as a political extremist, as a religious fanatic, about the virtues and the righteousness of our values. And these values happen to be tolerance, happen to be openness. But that doesn't mean we will trade them for anything. You see, I think this is an interesting point of discussion also. And my fifth case fifth point here, if we apply multiculturalism, the question arises what migrants are supposed to be integrated into. If all we have is some lefty global understanding and cultural self-harassment, is this enough as a foundation for cultural newcomers? Is it really enough to say that all we have is some kind of global values and a very critical idea of who we are? Does it work? Will they understand it? Right, and this leads on to a crucial aspect also mentioned in the program, moral norms. Moral norms. Clearly, we can eat different food, we can have diverse haircuts, and we can still claim to live in a society together and live peacefully, surely. But if we walk around with diametrically opposite basic moral norms, for instance around the role of women in society, what happens? That you could say is the litmus test of diversity. That is the litmus test of diversity. You need to test it. Can we then live peacefully in a common society? Can we avoid conflicts? Can we avoid conflicts? And the last thing I'd like to bring up before we, have some nice discussion here, all of us. It touches upon another left-wing treasure, another left-wing, cherished idea, namely the idea that we must focus on things we share, quote unquote, on the things we share, instead of things we do not share. We must engage in dialogue. We must seek common ground. We must find commonalities, and so on. And this clearly all sounds very tolerant, very progressive, very humane. And of course, it is a virtue to be optimistic and try to overcome hurdles. It's ingrained in us. You can't live without trying to find, to understand people. And, it's part of our human nature, you could say. But what if we can't? What if we share nothing? What if we share little or even nothing? What if there is no common ground, not even the size of a stamp? What if there is nothing but antagonism, conflict and confusion, no matter how deep we dig? This is an important question. And I hate to be a little bit pessimistic, but there is something eerie, something slightly naive, sometimes, in a certain kind of optimism, because it seems to assume that the one who searches, he will find. The one who searches, he will find. Maybe not. Maybe not. We can't be sure about it. And then I think we need to rethink the entire multicultural policy. And then I should sum this up somehow. He did a great summing up. So I think summing up would be simply to say that there are a lot of things we haven't thought through, I think, carefully enough. We need to think them through again. And we need to try to, if we try to go to find solutions, we need to try to avoid stereotypes, cliches, sometimes naive assumptions about commonalities if they don't exist. And there are many, many more things to say about this, but I think I stop there, and hopefully we will have a good discussion about it. Thank you so much.
Göran, thank you.